Hey folks, Malforian here, and today another one of my rambling/discussion videos, and that is because Paradox Interactive have announced today that Life by You is going to be cancelled. If you're unsure what this was their competitor to The Sims, and today they announced that they are not going to have the early access which they had recently delayed, and now we know why. I will put their statement up on the screen and I'll link to it in the description down below, but they've basically come out and said the game just wasn't that fun, and that's why they delayed the early access so they could work on it. And they've really just reevaluated the game. And I think they've looked at it and said, like, this is going to be so much work to get it into a good, fun state and something that they could build on with DLC. We all know the business model that Paradox have. You know, we can love it, we can hate it, but that is how they generally operate with all their games. And they've looked at it and said, nope, it isn't worth any more investment. They've put a lot of money into it, but I think they've just seen, like, it's going to cost too much to bring it to market. And then even if we do, it isn't going to make us our money back at that point. And I do wonder if the City Skylines 2 kind of debacle, I guess you could call it, has made them think like we can't afford another City Skylines 2 type launch. It would be really, really bad for us. I wonder if they've thought of that and just said, look, it's not worth us trying to get this out to market. I do think maybe if City Skylines 2 had launched successfully, maybe they would carry on with this, but I don't think they want two kind of duds on release back to back in a way. It's going to be a big surprise, I think, to some people. I know a lot of the Sims community were kind of hoping for this to do well, to give EA some competition, because I do always see everywhere on Reddit, online, all the usual places, like, why doesn't someone just make a Sims competitor? Well, this is why. It is incredibly hard to make a game that competes with the Sims. Maxis, for all their issues and all their DLC policies and all that kind of stuff, they know how to make a good game. And they've put so much work into that formula, into that game, that they know how to release games generally well. And people trying to get into that, there's so much work you've got to do. It's like people saying, why doesn't someone just release a Hearts of Iron competitor? It's because it's very hard to do. It's very hard to get it to launch. It's very hard to make it fun and obviously not be just a direct copy of that title. And we've seen from today's announcement that Paradox didn't think they could do it, and they've shut it down, which is unfortunate. Obviously, the studio that was making it, they're going to get hit by this now. Hopefully, they get work elsewhere in Paradox or can find something pretty soon. I'm sure we'll unfortunately hear that many of them will be losing their jobs, which is always sad to hear, especially in the climate at the moment in video games. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. It's been a weird couple of years for Paradox, if I'm honest. They've had some wins. Crusader Kings, a win in general. I know some people aren't super happy with its current state, but we'll see with Roads to Power whether they can keep the game going. I think if that's good, you could see a massive kind of flourish of Crusader Kings 3. If we look at the Steam database, at the moment, it's not doing too bad. It's around 18,000 players a day. This is just Steam. This isn't the Paradox launcher-only people, or if you're playing on the Epic Games Store or on console. Let's not mention console, to be honest. Let's not get into that on Crusader Kings 3. So, you know, these numbers will be higher elsewhere, but I think we can look at it as a general idea of how well the game is doing. And Crusader Kings 3 had an all-time peak of nearly 100,000 players. It is at 17,000 at the moment. I think this could almost beat its all-time peak if Road to Power is really good. It's got the Byzantine rework. It's got unlanded characters. It's got a bunch of other things. I've been covering the dev diaries on the channel if you kind of want to follow along as they build up to the launch of that DLC. I wouldn't be surprised if potentially it could hit over 100,000 if that expansion does do really well. So they are doing well in their kind of core games. If you look at Europa Universalis 4, 20,000, I actually thought this would have more players, but I guess that is quite a lot. It is an old game now. They have recently kind of shadow announced EU5. Again, I'm covering those announcements on the channel as well. They are doing weekly dev diaries, and I think there is a lot of hype around the next title in that series. If it's going to be called EU5, or they just reboot it as Europa Universalis, we will see in the future, but I think that game will do very, very well. An updated UI, a lot of other new mechanics coming into it. I think that will do well. And then, of course, their other title, which is actually their biggest one. I think a lot of people don't realize this. Hearts of Iron 4 has nearly 50,000 average players every day, and its all-time peak is also the second highest at 80,000 almost. So again, Hearts of Iron doing very well. Those three games, I would imagine, are basically fueling Paradox. They all have DLC, we all know the business model again, and they all must do pretty well in sales. So I think that side of the company is doing quite well. The problem is, and we'll take a quick look at these now before we finish this video, is their recent titles. There's been a few misses recently. We've got Victoria 3. Now, again, let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure some of you will be here saying, like, Victoria 3 is doing really well. I mean, look at the numbers on Steam. Less than 7,500 players at peak at the moment. Like, it's not too bad. Obviously, they made a lot of money at launch, a lot of money off the DLC passes, like Crusader Kings has. Now, I'm going to give a spicy hot take. I actually don't think Victoria 3 will get any more DLC after the current expansion pass comes out. Like, I could be wrong. I very well probably will be wrong, but my spicy hot take is that Victoria 3 won't get any more DLC if the next DLC they release doesn't do well. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's worth the money they're putting into it. Again, the numbers aren't like crazy low. They're less than half though than Crusader Kings 3, which is the worst of their top 3 games. So I don't know. Like, there's probably enough players there. They probably will do some more, but I wonder if they would commit to another expansion pass. Maybe we'll get DLC, but not a pass, so they can kind of, opt out of doing any more DLC within the next year, rather than thinking like, well, we've promised this content and now we're not going to do it. So a little bit of a tangent there, a little bit of a hot take, I'm sure. We'll see, obviously, in the next couple of months if that does come to pass. And then outside of that, there are other kind of strategy releases. We had Star Trek Infinite. We all know what happened there. Within a couple of months, that got shut down, basically. It is still running. You can still play it. But they already announced no DLC, no more patches. And just look at the numbers. Less than 100 players on average a day. Pretty bad. Millennia here, that was their other recent release. Millennia is actually a really good game. Some really interesting mechanics. The age mechanics and stuff like that in it. Really, really good. I think this kind of suffered from the graphics. Now, I'm definitely on the side of I'll take a good system with bad graphics, but I don't know. I think like the general populace of gaming probably looked at the graphics of Millennia and just went, nah, I'm out. I don't want to play this. Like, it looks like a game from the Commodore Amiga. And like I say, that is unfortunate because I think at the core of it, it is a good game. It's got some fantastic mechanics. I think it's a better game than, say, Humankind. But I just think the graphics, and I don't know, like I'm surprised it's got this few players. It's got less than 500 on average a day. I was surprised when I just looked those numbers up. I thought it would be doing a little bit better than that, like a couple of thousand, but that looks pretty bad. Are they going to get any DLC? Now, I think they already announced some. So again, I think like Victoria, whether we'll get that first season of DLC, and then again, it'll be like, that's done, no more Millennia content. Again, let me know what you think in the comments down below, but especially for Millennia, I just can't see them doing any more DLC outside of what's already been announced, which would be unfortunate. The team there, fantastic. The dev diaries they did were really, really good. Unfortunate if it does go that way, but if you're looking at it, less than 500 players on average, like you're just not making your money back on that game at that point. And then the last one is actually one of their kind of like older recent games, and that is Imperator Rome. Now, this has had a big spike due to some, pretty famous YouTubers in our kind of sphere of gaming trying to get a bit of a revival going for this game. And if you look at it now, 800 peak players, which is more than Millennia, more than Star Trek Infinite. It's way more than Lamplighters League. I haven't even put that on the screen, but that's got less than 50 players at peak most days, which is absolutely insane. Yeah, Imperator Rome, a bit of a comeback. Like, looking at those numbers, we're never going to get DLC for this game. I know I see people saying like, oh, if we could get it back enough, maybe we'll get some DLC. Like, that's never going to happen. I don't think they'll ever go back to Imperator Rome. A bit of a shame. Like, the 2.0 launch was actually really, really good. The kind of rebuilding up of the game, fantastic. There's an awesome mod. I think it's Invictus, is it? Someone could correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. That is a fantastic mod that the modding community have made, which builds on the reboot of it in 2.0 and makes it a really interesting game. It's so sad that game couldn't stick around and get some more DLC because kind of a missed opportunity. I think if they'd supported it, maybe it could get to like 5,000 players. But then again, I suppose looking at that, I've said Victoria 3, 7,000 players peak. They're probably not going to do loads more DLC for it. So I guess, using that logic, they wouldn't have done more DLC for Imperator Rome anyway, but we will obviously see. That is a spicy hot take to some, a cold take to others. Let me know what you think in the comments. But with that, I think we'll leave it there today. I just wanted to talk about the Life by You kind of cancellation, and then also like where it's leaving Paradox at the moment. I wonder if they're going to kind of retreat back into grand strategy gaming, or whether they're going to keep this policy of having the core games and then trying to kind of like offshoot into these other titles. I know some of the ones we've talked about today aren't developed by Paradox, they're only published, but at the end of the day, that Paradox name is on the box. So I think many players just look at it as, oh, that's a Paradox game. They're not saying like, oh yeah, but that was only published by them. They didn't actually make it themselves. So I think the argument doesn't really hold water where I see people say that, like, oh, that was only published by them. Like, the general player base don't look at it that way. I know we do as kind of super invested players of Paradox games, but I don't think it really holds water for the general populace of gaming players. But yeah, we'll leave it there for today. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you are new here, I am generally found covering Crusader Kings 3, EU5, or whatever it's going to be called, that is currently Project Caesar, and a bunch of other games as well on the channel. So if that's your kind of thing, subscribe to the channel. It would be awesome if you could do so. But I'll leave it there. and I'll see you in the next one.